Alright, hello, coming to you, 9:23. We have a, annotated bibliography due later today by midnight. And I am asking that you, go to the final guidelines and that you, select your Supreme Court case and you use Just Mercy and then use 4 other academic sources. Each citation in APA format should be followed by 150 to 200 words about how you're going to use the citation to further your argument. Okay. The final paper is going to be due on 11/12 and should be between 6 and 7 pages, including and then in addition to those, a title reference and title sheet. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to jump over to our course pack and we're going to look at some of the cases for this week. Last week we talked a lot about reasonable suspicion in the context of on face-to-face encounters after an arrest, and what that means. This week we're going to talk a little bit about what it means in relation to automobiles, and that's going to drive us into that automobile exception to the warrant requirement. The first case this week is Pennsylvania v. Mims. We have 2 Philadelphia police officers pulling over Mims for driving with an expired license plate. These are almost always going to occur after a routine traffic stop. An officer asked Mims to exit the car. The full text opinion, this was this officer's standard practice. Every time he pulled somebody over, he said, "Get out of the car." After he did that, he noticed a bulge under his jacket, engaged in a pat down, and discovered a revolver. Mims was charged with carrying a concealed weapon, and he was convicted. He appealed, saying that this should not have happened, that this search violated his Fourth Amendment rights, and that in general, the specific issue was that the police officer had no right to request that he exit the vehicle. And therefore, everything that followed after that was unlawful. And the Supreme Court disagreed. They say that that officer safety is always an issue when officers approaching a vehicle on foot, and asking passengers to step out of the vehicle for the encounter is perfectly acceptable under officer safety. Therefore, they were allowed to notice the bulge and engage in a stop and frisk. Okay, so the standard was a reasonable suspicion stop, and it is okay. The question in 1997 that we have coming up is whether or not we're now in Maryland. We're in 1997. Police officers stopped a car for speeding, and they asked Wilson to step out, and when he did, cocaine fell out of his pocket, and he was arrested for that. And the question was, and Wilson was not the driver, but he was nervous, and he was the passenger. And so can officers, they can get the driver out of the car under Pennsylvania v. Mims, but can they get the passengers out of the car too? And here the Supreme Court says that, yes, an officer can request passengers to step out. Officers are allowed to do this because officer safety must be protected. So when you are in a vehicle, if an officer approaches and asks you to get out of your car, you have to, whether or not you are the driver or the passenger. You don't have the ability to refuse, and that grounds is on officer safety. Okay. We're going to jump forward again to 2004 in Thornton v. United States. The license plate on Thornton's car did not match the vehicle. It was registered to a different vehicle. The officers pulled him over, and they asked if they could search him. He said, sure, and they found a couple of bags of drugs when they searched him. They then searched his vehicle, which he had already left, and they found a gun. Thornton tried to appeal to keep the gun out, saying that the gun was an unconstitutional search. the search was an incident to arrest, the area was not within his immediate control, and therefore they should not have been able to get into his car and access this gun. And the court said yes. They said that forcing officers to decide whether or not a suspect notice them before they gave permission is just really subjective, and it just practically can't be enforced. If the Supreme Court were to follow this down its trajectory, there are going to be times where officers are unsure if the Fourth Amendment would allow them to search or not. And therefore it's okay. Weapons, and they found that weapons and contraband are still easily accessible to somebody just because they're outside of a car. They're almost as accessible as if you were inside the car, and in some ways they're more so. So going back in is fine. Going back in is fine. Okay, so not only can they pull you and your passengers out, they can go back in to the vehicle. They can go back in, at least under this circumstance, okay? Our next case is Wren v. United States. Wren is driving around in a high drug area. Some plainclothes officers are patrolling the vehicle in an unmarked car, and they notice Wren and Brown sitting at the car for a long time. Of course they're sitting in their car, sitting at a stop sign and in their car for a long time, which is completely abnormal, right? Most of us don't even come to a full stop at a stop sign, so actually just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there is very unusual. So that caught the officer's attention. And they went up, they saw him holding cocaine, they saw Wren holding cocaine right in plain view. So the question is, was that search okay? And here we have a unanimous Supreme Court saying, as long as police officers have reasonable cause to believe a traffic violation occurred, they can stop any vehicle. Okay? This is a big departure from the past, because what this means is, and so here, or first of all, for here, they had reasonable cause to stop them because they stopped at a stop sign for a long time and then sped away at an unreasonable speed without using their turn signal. So we have an actual traffic violation. But what this means and what this case has been used to permit is pretextual stops. So if an officer suspects somebody of having guns or drugs, contraband, and they can pinpoint a specific traffic violation, they are allowed to pull you over for that traffic violation as a pretext to hopefully investigate further. And remember, once they pull you over, they can get you out, they can get your passengers out, whatever plain view is now in effect if you just happen to have your guns and drugs just laying in the passenger seat. All of those things are coming back into play now under this Wren analysis. So it's as long as they have any reason, any traffic violation, they can pull you over for. Okay. Another reason this case has become very important as far as policing traffic violations and covering guns and drugs is that it doesn't take very long for an officer to find a traffic violation. If they follow you for about 5 blocks, you're going to commit at least one traffic violation. So they can almost always have the ability to stop you if you're in your vehicle. Okay, next, vehicle-related case, Illinois v. Cabales. During a routine traffic stop, we have a drug detection dog alerting the police to marijuana. This case, the officer who made the traffic stop was a canine unit. The dog alerted right then and there, and the question is, was that canine sniff, do they need to have reasonable suspicion before the drug dog sniffed? So that's our question. And the court says no. There is no privacy at risk because the drug dogs are trained to alert to an illegal drug. There's not this objective expectation of privacy and something that you're not allowed to have in the first place. So his Fourth Amendment rights were not violated. It is not a search for an officer to use a drug detection dog on your vehicle. Okay. Our next and last case for this week is Arizona v. Gant. In Arizona v. Gant, we have another traffic stop. That's our theme for this week. Gant was pulled over for driving on a suspended license. He was handcuffed and then locked into a patrol car. After they locked him in the patrol car, they searched his car and found cocaine in a jacket that was lying in the rear seat, in the back seat. And he moved to have those drugs suppressed because he was locked away in a police car. He had no access to the vehicle, no access to the drugs. And so he argued that it violated this principle of a search incident to arrest, where officers are only supposed to search the area in immediate control. And the court essentially agreed. They can only search the passenger compartment of a vehicle incident to an arrest if they have reason to believe the arrestee might access the vehicle at the time of the search, or the vehicle contains evidence of the arrest of the offense the person was arrested of. Okay. And here he was arrested for driving on a suspended license. He was arrested on nothing to do with drugs. Therefore, they should not have been able to go to the vehicle. So Gant wins his case before the Supreme Court. Okay, so this is just a quick run through of the cases that you're going to be working on and reading on this week. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great week, and I will hopefully talk to you and hear from you soon.